And joining us now here in the studio is Tom Dodds. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation. Tom, it's good to see you down here in the south.
Oh, well, it's great to be here.
What are you doing here anyway? Shouldn't you be up north?
Well, actually, we're working with a bunch of other economic development officers. We have an organization called 1DC, which is Ontario's North Economic Development Corporation. We do projects together, sort of pan-northern projects, and we get together from time to time and sort of say, okay, what's next?
Gotcha. I'm asking everybody this as a first question. How's the economy doing in Sault Ste. Marie?
I think the economy, I guess I look at it from the benefit of about 20 years of it. I say the economy is doing okay because the alternatives could be a whole lot worse. We're in an economy whereby we had managed our way through relatively well from 2008 on. But now, we've got some challenges with the steel mill right now. It's at a point where it's looking at refinancing. The market is up, but they've gone through a long period of time where it's been very tough. So we're optimistic, but that's an important part of the Soo, as you may quite well imagine. Lottery Corporation is going through a modernization. We're greatly affected by that because we have, as you may know, the headquarters of the Lottery Corporation.
I remember when David Peterson made the decision 25 years ago or so to move it up there.
Yeah.
And how many people are working there?
Well, we've got about, the casino aside, we've got about 650 people that work in the headquarters, and then this casino's got about 300 and generates about $40 to $45 million annually. So it's a big part of the economy. Now, as you're aware, this modernization process and the Drummond report had pointed out that there are really two operations to the Lottery Corporation, one here in Toronto and one here in the Soo. We're advocating for the Soo. The Premier has said that the headquarters of Lottery Corporation is in Sault Ste. Marie. We don't know what the modernization process will look like or mean for the community.
What's your view on whether they should sell it off, which of course is the plan du jour?
Yes, well, it's a good question. I can argue it probably both ways. On one side it says, why would you divest yourself of what is essentially a monopoly that generates a considerable amount of revenue for the province? What is the value added that the private sector is going to be putting forth? I think it's a great idea if there is in fact significant value added by the private sector, because they can do things that perhaps in a government crown corporation environment you wouldn't be able to do. I guess I'm agnostic on that. My biggest concern is that the kind of expertise we have in the Soo that's related to lottery and gaming be resident in the Soo. The good news about the modernization process, it's caused the Lottery Corporation to take a harder look at the community. We're working quite extensively with the folks that are responsible for modernization. So we have a lot of small projects. Digital gaming has really emerged as a strength because, as they point out, where is our expertise in lottery gaming? It's resident in Sault Ste. Marie. And by the way, contrary to what you might think, Ontario does a heck of a job. It is looked at as a shining example of lottery operations through North America. So with that in mind, we're thinking, okay, how can we capitalize on that?
Gotcha. Let's talk a bit more about what you do.
Yes.
What do you do? What's your job?
Well, my job is, as the CEO of Economic Development, my job is to do some very basic things. Retain and grow the businesses we have, attract investment and new businesses from outside of the community, nurture the small businesses that we have, and generally speaking, address those issues or those impediments that affect I would call it the economic and business development environment within the community. So that's all over the map.
All right, let me give you a chance to make the elevator pitch. I'm a businessman with $1 million I want to spend to set up a new business. I can do it in any one of 100 different municipalities in Ontario. Why would I want to come to the Soo?
I think that the key point that I would say is that if you come to Sault Ste. Marie, you're going to be part of the community, and your value to the community is going to be recognized. I know it's a very broad statement, but if you look at it in terms of the practical aspects of it, from a standpoint of infrastructure, we have infrastructure that's second to none. There's low cost, all of the low cost commercial properties, all of the kind of fundamentals are there. But at the end of the day, there's skilled expertise, colleges and universities. But if you come into the community, you will be somebody who is appreciated and somebody that the community will work with to nurture the development of your company.
Everything I hear on the news, though, tells me energy is going to cost more in the north. Well, let's start there. The two things I hear. Energy is going to cost more, to which you say?
Well, I'd say two things. First of all, Sault Ste. Marie is a net energy producer. We produce 6 times more energy than anywhere else in the province, and it's all green. It's hydroelectric, solar, wind. So all of those things that may be appealing to you as a company that you want to espouse a green ethic, Sault Ste. Marie is a great place to be. In terms of security of your electricity, Sault Ste. Marie has the capacity, and this is certainly true in the big blackout that happened in the Northeast years ago. We had to feed the grid for Ontario, but technically we could have hived ourselves off and happily gone on without any noticeable change in terms of the issues of electricity. So security, the issue of electricity, and something that's very attractive.
My power is going to be secure, it's going to be clean, but is it going to be affordable?
Well, I think it will if the government continues to give some consideration to what they're doing now. It is essentially a subsidy to help level that playing field. I think that's absolutely it's critically important to the success of large companies, particularly energy-intensive companies. As an economic development organization, while I want clean and green businesses to locate there, I also am interested in ones that use a lot of power, because we have the power to offer, and assuming that the playing field's level, I think we've got some real opportunities.
Okay, the second thing I hear all the time is, Tom, the Soo is a wonderful community. They got lots of stuff to do there. If you love the great outdoors, if you like skiing, if you like water skiing, you like boating, you like all of these things that are wonderful to do outdoors, it's fantastic. It's a little far away. It's a little remote. I hear that all the time, as do you.
Yes.
So how do you respond?
Well, I would make two observations. I would say, where you locate is a matter of trade-offs. We are not going to have the assets that a place like Toronto would have, but you will have a different quality of life. And I'd argue if it's the kind of quality of life that you have, where you're 10 minutes, and that's a long drive in Sault Ste. Marie to get to your job, where you've got skilled resources to draw on, you've got expertise in all of the points I raised before, those things are kind of are very attractive to it. And also the distance is not all that bad. You're looking at someone who arrived this morning, who left Sault Ste. Marie and was downtown Toronto within an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's an hour flight, right?
It's an hour flight, but plus the ferry, and Porter has fundamentally changed the communities that goes into Northern Ontario, and I can't underline that enough. It's introduced competition to these communities in the north, and it's provided us an access where we have people that live in Toronto and work in Sault Ste. Marie and come back. And we have a lot of the inverse where people live in Sault Ste. Marie and work in Toronto. It's not that hard. It's not as bad as people would think.
How do you know, or I guess how do the taxpayers know, because I assume you are funded by your municipality and...
We're funded by the municipality, private sources, federal and provincial governments. The federal and provincial is generally on a project basis, and the private is generally for the purposes of marketing.
How do any of those stakeholders know whether they're getting value for the money they put into you?
Basically, we have a strategic plan. They measure results. Some are easier to measure than others. So, for example, if we're doing tourism marketing, there's a very clear return. Having said that, it's a bit difficult, especially when you have the price of the Canadian dollar being on a border city. There's a whole bunch of variables, but you can see at least what the activity produced in some results. And there are some measurable things like that. Sometimes it's hard to measure. Steve, I got to tell you, it's difficult when you're working on advocating to government that Sault Ste. Marie is the headquarters. There's some real opportunities here, and we really like to work with you. It's hard to measure that effort. I think we measure it in what the alternatives are. If we don't do anything, the retention part of my job is the primary activity in the last 10 minutes. I would say the last couple of years.
Tell me whether you believe it's a net benefit or a net detriment to the fact that a multinational steel company named Essar Steel out of India now owns what used to be a Canadian-owned steel company that used to be called Algoma.
I think that what history would show you is that it has probably been a net benefit. The initial years when the industry was doing well, they invested a lot into the company. I think there's something that's very interesting that people probably don't appreciate. While the number of employees has diminished, it has not been done through layoffs. In fact, they have a bit of a no layoff policy there. It's been done through attrition. Now, there's a bit of concern because the demographics are changing, but that in a place like Sault Ste. Marie is not insignificant. What we see on the horizon is a company that is trying to make Sault Ste. Marie and Essar Steel is a beachhead for this company in North America. It's got a mine that produces steel pellets. We're integral to a strategic effort. So I would say that most companies that have been there before, there's been focus on the bottom line, shareholders. These guys are in it for the long haul.
You think they're here to stay?
I think they're in here for the long haul. I think they're here to stay. The next little while, as I explained, as they refinance and reposition themselves, is going to be tough. But they're one of the lowest cost producers of steel, of hot metal roll in North America.
Okay. Let me raise one more issue with you, and that is that they used to say that the two biggest exports from Sault Ste. Marie are steel and young people. And I wonder if that's changed at all.
I would say that it's slowed down. I think that there's a lot of, and I would say it's a cultural change as much as it is anything else. I think I've seen a lot more youth wanting to invest in the community, wanting to have that experience, that don't want to move out of the town, and they recognize that they've got to do something themselves. They've got to be very entrepreneurial in their efforts. And that has not been the case, I would say, in the past decade. I think it's emerging. I went to a couple of community events, and it was driven by, and I'll just give a small example. We have a street in Sault Ste. Marie called Gore Street, and it's perhaps not as bright and shiny as people would like. Somebody has rented a place there. They held an event, and you paid $10 at the door, and they had social enterprises come forward, finding places where there's food deserts, and how to provide food for poor people, how to deal with different disenfranchised groups and bring them together. And this was everybody that made the presentations was, for the most part, under 30. They got to keep the proceeds of what you paid at the door, which was $1,000. I would have never imagined that, 5 or 10 years ago. That was done completely by the youth of the community, and very, very pragmatic kind of approaches to addressing these problems.
So as you look forward, what do you see?
As I look forward, I see a couple of really interesting things. I think that you'll see in SR Steel, I'm so used to saying Algoma, I would see that company is going to have reinvestment in it. It's going to improve, it's going to optimize, it's an advanced manufacturer. It's going to look at new transportation opportunities to get that iron ore from Minnesota. On the information communications and technology, focusing on digital gaming, I see there's incredible benefits that are coming forward now. And I'm talking about businesses that have already established themselves and are growing as a result of the presence of OLG.
Okay. Tom Dodds, we wish you well. You're the Chief Executive Officer of the Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation. Thanks for visiting us here at TVO.
Thanks, Steve.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.